My wife of 12 years cheated with my best friend after my accident, used my life insurance money to plan their new life and called me brain damaged after I caught her, but now she wants to reconcile after her little fantasy crumbled. I, 39M, never thought I'd be typing out something like this, but here I am. My wife Sarah, 38F, and I have been married for 12 years. We have 2 children, a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. We had what I thought was a perfect life, a beautiful home, healthy kids, and successful careers. I worked as a civil engineer while Sarah was a marketing executive. My best friend since college, Mike, 40M, was practically part of our family. He was my kid's uncle, the best man at our wedding, and the person I trusted most outside of my wife. 8 months ago, my life changed dramatically. I was in a serious car accident that left me in a coma for 3 weeks. The doctors weren't sure if I would wake up, and if I did, they warned my family I might have significant brain damage. Miraculously, I woke up with my cognitive functions largely intact, though I had to undergo intensive physical therapy for several months due to injuries to my legs and right arm. During my recovery, Sarah seemed supportive but distant. I chalked it up to stress. Suddenly becoming the sole provider while taking care of 2 kids and a husband undergoing rehabilitation would be hard on anyone. Mike stepped up too, coming over frequently to help with the kids, house repairs, and even driving Sarah places when needed. I was grateful to have such supportive people in my life. About 4 months into my recovery, when I was finally starting to regain some independence, I noticed some odd behavior. Sarah began taking more girls' nights than usual. She bought new clothes and started wearing makeup more often, something she hadn't prioritized when I was in hospital. Her phone was suddenly password protected, and she would take calls in another room. Again, I tried not to be suspicious. Sarah had been through a traumatic experience too, and I thought maybe she just needed some space to process everything. The truth came out in the most hurtful way possible. I was home alone one afternoon while Sarah was at work and the kids were at school. I was looking for our insurance documents to submit some final medical claims when I found a folder in Sarah's desk that contained a life insurance policy I didn't know existed. She had taken it out on me 3 years earlier, a $500,000 policy. There were also printouts of beach houses in Mexico, along with information about schools in the area. Confused, I checked our joint accounts and discovered that Sarah had moved significant amounts of money around during my hospitalization. When I recovered enough to take an interest in our finances again, she had moved most of it back, but there was still about $30,000 missing. My gut told me something was very wrong. While I'm not proud of it, I checked Sarah's laptop, which she had left open on our desk. Her email was logged in, and I found dozens of exchanges between her and Mike dating back to just a week after my accident. The email started as innocent updates about my condition but quickly evolved into something much more intimate. They discussed their feelings for each other, how they had tried to fight it, and eventually, plans for the future, a future that involved taking my children to Mexico to start a new life, funded by my life insurance money. The most devastating email was from Sarah to Mike, sent about 2 weeks after my accident. The doctors don't think he'll wake up, and if he does, he'll likely have severe brain damage. We need to be prepared for what happens next. I can't spend the rest of my life as a caretaker. I was sitting in our home office, staring at those words when Sarah came home early from work. She saw me at her computer and immediately knew what I had discovered. Instead of apologizing, she became defensive. She told me I didn't understand what she'd been through, that the doctors had prepared her for the worst, and that Mike had just been there to support her through an impossible situation. When I confronted her about the life insurance and the money, she broke down and admitted everything. She and Mike had begun an affair shortly after my accident. They had convinced themselves that I would either die or be severely impaired, and they had started planning a life together. The missing money had been used as a deposit on a property in Mexico, where they planned to move with my children once I was settled in long-term care. I asked her to leave the house that night. She begged me to reconsider, saying it was all a mistake made during extreme stress. When I didn't budge, she became angry and said some truly horrible things, including that even though I hadn't suffered the brain damage the doctors feared, I wasn't the same person and never would be again. Mike, for his part, sent me a pathetic text saying he never meant for this to happen and that he hoped someday I could forgive him. I blocked his number immediately. I've spent the last 3 months trying to rebuild my life. Sarah moved in with her sister, and we have a temporary custody arrangement where she has the kids on weekends. I've returned to work part-time, and my physical recovery is going well, though I still walk with a slight limp and have some weakness in my right arm. Here's where I need advice. Sarah has been trying to reconcile for the past month. According to her sister, who called me, horrified after learning the full story, Mike ended things with Sarah when he realized I was recovering well and the life insurance wouldn't be paying out. Sarah now claims she's had a wake-up call and realizes what's truly important. She's started sending me long emails about how sorry she is, how much she misses our family, and how she wants another chance. Part of me is still in love with the woman I thought she was, but I don't think I can ever trust her again. How do I move forward co-parenting with someone who was literally planning a new life with my best friend while I was fighting for my life? And how do I explain this situation to our children in an age-appropriate way? Update 1. I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and advice. I've been overwhelmed by the response, and it's given me a lot to think about. I haven't responded individually because, frankly, this has all been emotionally exhausting, but I wanted to provide an update on what's happened in the last few weeks. After reading your comments, I decided to consult with a lawyer about my situation. The consultation was eye-opening. The lawyer confirmed that Sarah's actions, particularly moving our joint funds and planning to take the children out of the country, would likely work strongly in my favor if we pursued a divorce with a custody battle. She also advised me to document everything, which I've been doing meticulously. I've recovered the $30,000 that Sarah had used as a deposit on the Mexican property. Apparently, the deal fell through when Mike pulled out of their plans, and the money had been sitting in a separate account Sarah had opened. She transferred it back to our joint account after I confronted her with a formal letter from my lawyer. As for Sarah's attempts at reconciliation, they've become increasingly desperate. She showed up at my workplace last week with flowers and lunch, creating an uncomfortable scene in front of my colleagues. When I refused to engage and asked her to leave, she broke down crying in the parking lot. I felt terrible, but I also recognize this as emotional manipulation. The most difficult part has been explaining the situation to our children. I consulted with a child psychologist who advised against sharing the full truth at their ages. Instead, we've told them that mommy and daddy are having some grown-up problems and need some time apart to figure things out. They've obviously picked up that something serious is happening, especially since they've noticed that Uncle Mike suddenly isn't around anymore. My daughter asked me directly if mommy had done something bad. I didn't want to lie, so I told her that mommy had made some choices that hurt daddy very much, and that's why we needed some space from each other. I emphasized that both of us still love them completely and that none of this is their fault. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. Sarah's sister has become an unexpected ally. She was horrified when she learned the full extent of Sarah and Mike's plans. She told me that Sarah had only shared a sanitized version, claiming it was a brief emotional affair that developed during a stressful time. When I showed her sister copies of the emails discussing the life insurance and Mexico plans, she was speechless. She's now helping ensure the kids' time with Sarah goes smoothly while maintaining appropriate boundaries. As for Mike, he apparently tried to reconcile with his wife. Yes, he was married too. I should have mentioned that in my original post. She threw him out immediately and has filed for divorce. He's now living in a studio apartment and, according to mutual friends, has been telling anyone who'll listen that he made the biggest mistake of his life. He sent me another long message apologizing and asking if we could talk. I haven't responded and don't plan to. I've started individual therapy to help process everything, and it's been helpful. My therapist has pointed out that I'm still grieving multiple losses: the wife I thought I had, my best friend, and the life I had planned. She's also helping me work through the trauma of discovering that the people closest to me were essentially waiting for me to die or be severely disabled. For now, I'm focusing on healing physically and emotionally, being the best father I can be, and rebuilding my sense of trust in others. I'm proceeding with the divorce, though it will take time to finalize everything. I don't see a path to reconciliation with Sarah. The betrayal runs too deep, and the cold, calculated nature of their plan still chills me to the bone when I think about it. Update 2. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and a lot has happened. The divorce proceedings are underway, and things have gotten more complicated. Sarah has shifted strategies entirely. After her initial attempts at reconciliation failed, she's now fighting me on everything: custody, asset division, even our shared pet dog. Her new narrative is that I'm punishing her for a mistake she made while under extreme duress and that I'm using my accident to gain sympathy. She's telling family members and friends that I've become bitter and vengeful since the accident and that my personality has changed. The irony isn't lost on me. First, she was planning to rebuild her life assuming I'd be brain damaged, and now she's claiming I am emotionally damaged to justify her behavior. Fortunately, I have all the emails and documentation, which my lawyer says will be very compelling if we end up in court. The custody battle has become my primary concern. Sarah is pushing for 50-50 custody, which on the surface seems reasonable, but I have serious reservations given her previous plans to take the children to Mexico without my knowledge or consent. My lawyer is confident we can get primary custody with Sarah having generous visitation, but it's going to be a fight. One particularly disturbing development: Sarah somehow convinced the parents at our kids' school that I'm the one who had the affair, completely flipping the script. I found out when another dad approached me at my son's soccer game, awkwardly offering support for dealing with Sarah's betrayal. When I looked confused, he backtracked, saying Sarah had told everyone that she had caught me having an affair while she was caring for me after the accident. I was floored by the blatant lie. I've had to do damage control, discreetly letting a few close parent friends know the truth without turning it into more drama for the kids. It's exhausting having to defend myself against completely fabricated accusations. On a positive note, my physical recovery continues to improve. I'm now working full-time again, and while I still have some pain and limitations, I'm far better than doctors initially predicted. My children have been my greatest motivation to heal and stay strong through all of this. They're still struggling with the situation, especially my daughter who has started acting out at school. I've enrolled them both in therapy with a counselor who specializes in children dealing with divorce. It seems to be helping, but there's no quick fix for the confusion and pain they're experiencing. As for Mike, he's apparently moved to another state after his divorce was finalized. Good riddance. Several mutual friends have reached out to reconnect, admitting they distanced themselves because they knew about the affair but didn't know how to tell me. Some relationships I've been able to salvage, others feel permanently damaged by their silence during my greatest time of need. Sarah's sister remains supportive and has become an important neutral party for the kids. She facilitates some of the handoffs for visitation to minimize direct conflict between Sarah and me. She's also been honest with me about Sarah's state of mind, warning me when Sarah is particularly angry or volatile so I can prepare accordingly. The hardest part in all of this has been maintaining my composure for the sake of the children. There are moments I want to rage at Sarah for the devastating betrayal and the ongoing lies, but I know that would only hurt the kids more. Instead, I document everything, follow my lawyer's advice, and focus on being the stable, loving parent my children need right now. Update 3. It's been 4 months since my last update, and there have been some significant developments. The divorce has been finalized, and I've been awarded primary physical custody of the children, with Sarah having them every other weekend and one evening during the week for dinner. The judge was not impressed by Sarah's behavior, particularly after seeing the emails about the life insurance and Mexico plans. What really turned the tide in the custody hearing was the testimony of Sarah's own sister. She reluctantly took the stand and confirmed that Sarah had discussed taking the children to Mexico permanently, without my knowledge or consent. She also testified that Sarah had admitted to her that the affair with Mike had actually begun about 2 months before my accident, not after as Sarah had claimed. This was news even to me, and it felt like being punched in the gut all over again. The financial settlement was relatively straightforward since we had clear documentation of all assets. Sarah did try to argue that her career had suffered due to caring for me after the accident, but given that she had been planning to leave the country with my life insurance money, this argument didn't get much traction. We sold the family home, split the proceeds, and I've purchased a smaller house in the same school district for the children and me. As for Sarah, she's had to face some harsh realities. Her reputation in our social circle has taken a significant hit as the truth came out during the divorce proceedings. She lost her marketing executive position, unclear if she was fired or resigned, and is now working at a smaller company with presumably lower pay. According to her sister, she's been dating sporadically but nothing serious. The most surprising development came last month. I received a handwritten letter from Mike. He's apparently been in therapy and part of his amends process was writing to me. The letter was 12 pages long, detailing how the affair began, his shame and regret, and his understanding that he's destroyed our friendship beyond repair. He enclosed a check for $25,000, money he claims Sarah had given him from our joint accounts that I hadn't known about. I verified with my bank, and indeed, there had been additional withdrawals I hadn't discovered. I donated the money to the trauma center that treated me after my accident. I didn't respond to Mike's letter. Some betrayals are simply unforgivable, and while I don't wish him ill, I have no desire to have him in my life in any capacity. The children are adjusting to our new normal. My son seems to be coping better than my daughter, who still has moments of anger and confusion about why her family has changed so dramatically. The therapy is helping, though, and I've noticed improvement in recent weeks. We've established new traditions and routines in our new home, which provides some stability. My own recovery continues to progress. I still have some physical limitations, I probably always will, but I've adapted remarkably well. The emotional recovery has been harder. Trust doesn't come easily to me anymore, and the idea of dating again seems overwhelming, though friends have gently suggested I might be ready to consider it. Last week, Sarah asked to speak with me privately after dropping off the kids. She seemed genuinely remorseful for perhaps the first time, acknowledging the enormity of her betrayal without excuses or justifications. She said therapy has helped her recognize the selfishness of her actions and the pain she's caused. She didn't ask for reconciliation but rather for forgiveness and a more amicable co-parenting relationship moving forward. I told her I appreciated her apology and agreed that working together better for the children was important. As for forgiveness, I said that might come with time, but I couldn't promise. What happened has fundamentally changed how I see her, and while I can move past the anger for our children's sake, forgetting is impossible. So that's where things stand now. I'm a single dad rebuilding my life day by day. The pain hasn't disappeared, but it's no longer all-consuming. I'm focusing on my health, my career, and most importantly, creating a stable, loving home for my children. If there's one thing this experience has taught me, it's the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Even in our darkest moments, there's a way forward if we're brave enough to take it. Final update. It's been a year since my last update, and I wanted to provide some closure to this chapter of my life. So much has changed, mostly for the better. The kids and I have settled comfortably into our new home and routine. They're now 12 and 10, growing and thriving despite the upheaval they've experienced. My daughter still has occasional emotional outbursts, but they're becoming less frequent. My son has become quite protective of his sister and me, sometimes taking on more responsibility than a child his age should, but we're working on that in family therapy. Co-parenting with Sarah has stabilized into a functional, if not friendly, arrangement. We use a co-parenting app to communicate about the children, which helps maintain appropriate boundaries. She has been consistent with visitation and seems genuinely committed to rebuilding her relationship with the kids. According to her sister, Sarah continues with therapy and has made significant progress in understanding the damage her actions caused. I've heard through mutual friends that Mike moved across the country and got remarried to someone much younger. I feel nothing but pity for his new wife, who likely has no idea of his capacity for betrayal. His attempt at amends was his final communication with me, and I prefer to keep it that way. On a personal level, I've experienced tremendous growth. My physical recovery plateaued about 6 months ago, leaving me with a slight limp and occasional pain in my right arm, but nothing that significantly impacts my quality of life. I've advanced in my career, taking on a leadership role at my engineering firm that allows me more flexibility for family responsibilities. Perhaps the biggest change is that I've started dating again. It happened unexpectedly through a parents' volunteer group at the kids' school. Her name is Elaine, she's a widow with a son the same age as mine, and we connected over shared experiences of having our lives upended in ways we never anticipated. We've been seeing each other for about 5 months now, taking things slowly and mindfully, especially considering our children. Elaine knows my full story, and I know hers. There's a level of honesty and communication between us that I never had with Sarah, even before the betrayal. The kids have met each other and get along well, though we've been clear with them that we're just dating and not making any bigger decisions yet. The hardest lesson I've learned through all of this is about forgiveness. Not forgiving Sarah and Mike for their sake, but for my own. Holding on to anger and resentment was keeping me tethered to the trauma. I haven't forgotten what happened, and I never will, but I've chosen to release the daily burden of that betrayal. It no longer defines me or my decisions. Sarah noticed this change in me during a recent parent-teacher conference. Afterward, she commented that I seemed happier, more like my old self. There was a moment of recognition between us, an acknowledgement of what was lost, but also of the possibility that something new and different could be reclaimed. Not our marriage, that's gone forever, but perhaps someday a friendship of sorts for the sake of our children. My accident and the betrayal that followed nearly destroyed me, but they also forced me to rebuild myself from the ground up. In that reconstruction, I discovered strengths I never knew I possessed and clarity about what truly matters. The life I have now isn't the one I planned, but there's beauty and purpose in it that I might never have found otherwise. To anyone facing betrayal by those you trust most, the path forward is neither straight nor easy, but it exists. Some days you'll only manage a single step, and that's okay. Keep moving, keep breathing, keep believing in your own resilience. The wounds may not heal completely, but they will become part of your story rather than its ending. Thank you all for accompanying me on this journey. Your support and advice helped during my darkest moments, and for that, I'll always be grateful. This will be my final update, not because the story is over, but because a new one has begun.